Well, we've got clouds coming in from the west for the big show tonight, the lunar eclipse. Will the debris clouds get out of the way when these thunderstorms die out? And we have what looks like could be a robust severe weather outbreak for later Monday. We're going to cover both of those subjects, and we are also going to take a little bit of a look at the tropics as the first tropical weather outlooks of the season are out. All that and more tonight on the Joe and Joe Weather Show. A rare, well, not that rare because we do move the times around on occasion, but here we are on a Sunday evening. And I tell you what, why don't we hi to everybody on the chat board. Thanks for changing, for the regulars. Thank you for switching over to the 7 o'clock start time. At least it's not football season, so that's good. Although I think there's a Ranger game tonight. So anyway, and that'll be over with by 10 o'clock, more than likely, unless they go to overtime. So why don't we get right to it with respect to what's happening here. Joe Rayo is going to we're going to do the lunar eclipse stuff first. We'll look at the everything else as we go down the road. I'm very interested in what could happen tomorrow with severe weather, but let's do the eclipse. And Joe, I got the satellite loop tonight, so everything is on the northeast satellite loop, and I've zoomed in very, very tightly here. And there you go with the clouds and the thunderstorms. This, you look at it. When I was looking at this aloft, it's a little kink, part of what's left over from last week's upper air storm, which finally is getting out of the way. There's this little kink left, and that little kink is moving eastward and showing up that line. I have to tell you, I'm a little encouraged over the fact that there's a sharp clearing line behind it. So, I think that may help. The one issue for some areas, particularly in the coast, I think, may be low clouds coming in off the water. Yeah. That may cloud up the skies even after the debris cloudiness gets out of the way.
Yeah, I tried my best during this afternoon to try to calibrate what you're showing on the screen, Joe, in terms of the satellite picture, the radar, and really, I could not, do it using, the NAM or the GFS. So what I did, and it's very unusual for me to do this, one of the models that are offered on Tropical Tidbits is the WRF, the Weather Research and Forecasting Model, the WRF -ARW model, Advanced Research Model. And from what I saw at about 4 o'clock this afternoon, that model lined up very, very well with what was going on in terms of the radar. And I mean, like, for example, the HRRR. The HRRR really didn't have any idea or any clue what was going on. The 3 kilometer NAM was perhaps the closest of the regular models that we look at, but I use the WRF, and from what I can see, and what I put on my Facebook page, and this is in stark conflict, I might add, with the local television people. I did get a view of all of the TV weathercasters this evening, and all 3 of them said pretty much the same thing. Well, there's an eclipse of the moon tonight. Oh, we're terribly sorry, but you're not going to be able to see any of it because of all the clouds and the showers and the thunderstorms. Well, I think I know what you're thinking. And taking a mix of the model run and also mixing in man-made empiricism. I mean, again, we're pretty well at the end now for forecasting. Now it's time for nowcasting, and from what I could see, that line, that kink, if you will, in the atmosphere is producing that area of showers and clouds and embedded thunderstorms is moving at a pretty good clip. And I think that what's going to happen is that skies are going to begin to clear from northwest to southeast, so that by the time we get to the midpoint of the eclipse, which will be just after midnight, I think areas from New York City on north and west will actually have the moon in view. Sadly, I think for places south and east of New York City, especially Long Island and good part of Connecticut and down the Jersey Shore, the low clouds are going to persist. And there may also be, as we've seen the last few nights, also some areas of fog as well. Let me throw up here on the screen a few slides from my program that I've been giving of late. This is the program I've been calling The Night of the Red Moon, which is really pretty much what we're going to be looking at tonight. And we get an eclipse of the moon, because the sun is shining on the Earth. The Earth, of course, throws a long conical shadow out into space for about 860,000 miles. Now, at the point where the moon is, 250,000 miles away from the Earth, the shadow, the conical shadow, what we call the umbra, is about 5,800 miles wide. And the moon is only about 2,100 miles wide, so there's no problem in getting the moon immersed in the shadow of the Earth. There's plenty of room, and causing it to completely disappear, as will be the case tonight. Or did I say completely disappear? We did say that this is the night of the red moon. Now, we know that the moon shines not on its own, but by sunlight, so you would figure that when the moon goes into the shadow of the Earth and the Earth blocks off the light of the sun from the moon, that the moon should black out, and yet it doesn't, because of a very special thing, our atmosphere. Instead, it changes this into this orangey or coppery color. And the reason that is that if you remember from your earth science class back in 9th grade, I guess, 8th or 9th grade, I hope your teacher did show you how you could break sunlight, which appears to be white, into the colors of the rainbow with a simple glass prism. Red, orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo, violet. You remember Roy G. Biv. Any case, when the sun is high in the sky, we tend to see the short wavelength of light tilting toward the blue, and that's why the sky appears blue during the daytime. But when we get to the time of sunrise or sunset, well, down near the horizon, the sky turns orange and red, because now we're looking toward the long wavelengths of orange and red. We're on the opposite end from blue, and that's why you see those colors along the horizon at the time of sunrise and sunset. Well, now, if you're on the moon tonight, if you were looking up at the sky, what would you see? You would see not an eclipse of the moon, obviously, because you're on the moon. You would see an eclipse of the sun. And the object that's going to cover the sun up is us, the Earth. The Earth is going to come between the sun and the moon. And on the moon's surface, when you look up toward the Earth is 4 times bigger in apparent size than the moon is, as we see it from here on the Earth. So you got this big, dark, black plate, if you will, coming in front of the sun. And then during totality, when the entire sun is covered by the Earth, the atmosphere of the Earth is backlit by the light of the sun. And because the atmosphere acts like a lens, it bends or refracts that red light. That's the light we see along the rim of the Earth. That's the light that you see every morning and every night at sunrise and sunset. Think of it this way. The combined light of all the sunrises and all the sunsets happening on the Earth at the time when the eclipse is total, the lunar eclipse is total, that red light has been bent or sent into the Earth's shadow, and so we see a red moon at the time when the eclipse is total. Here's a view of the whole region tonight that's going to see the eclipse. Everybody on the night side of the Earth will see this, South America, North America, and since the Earth rotates, and since the eclipse is not a moment in time, but lasts several hours, the rotation of the Earth is going to turn so that folks off the rim here, Africa and also Europe, will see the beginning of the eclipse before the moon sets and the sun rises here. And over here, Hawaii will see the eclipse right after the midpoint as the moon is rising, and they'll see this latter part of the eclipse. And so if you take into account both continents, Africa, Europe, you have a total of 2 billion, Mr. Sagan, people in line for viewing the eclipse, weather conditions locally permitting. It's like being inside of a movie theater. Consider that the moon is the screen, the movie screen, and you're going to see a show. Well, not a movie on the moon, but you'll see a show that takes into account the shadow of the Earth. It's going to be a little shadow play up there. And also, midway, you'll see the moon light up that reddish color. So you're going to get entertained for at least an hour and a half or so, which is about the length of a full-length movie these days. And consider everybody in the movie theater to be those people who live on the dark side of the Earth, on the nighttime side, looking up at the screen and seeing the movie. Well, we're looking up tonight, all of us on the dark part of the Earth, looking up at the moon. That would be the movie screen. And shortly after 10 o'clock tonight, the movie or the celestial show will begin. This totality will last, and it's the longest total eclipse we've had around here in a good long time. Lunar eclipses, total lunar eclipses, usually last, let's say about half an hour totality-wise, half an hour, 45 minutes. Last year, there was one in the western U.S. that lasted 15 minutes. This one, from start to finish, from the start of totality at 11:29 to the end of totality at 12:54, that's 85 minutes. We have not had a total eclipse last that long since August of 1989. And in a way, this will be good, because it's lasts so long. That gives us a chance. If the clearing is slower or takes its sweet time, at least you'll have 85 minutes, and hope that perhaps during that 85-minute time frame there'll be enough of a break in the clouds so that you'll have a shot at seeing the moon in totality. It looks like the shadows, creeping across the moon, but actually it's the moon doing the creeping. The moon moves through the shadow of the Earth from right to left as it's rotating or revolving around the Earth. And as I said, the umbra, the dark shadow of the Earth, is 5,800 miles wide. The moon is only about 2,100 miles wide. So as you can see, plenty of room to fit the moon. And in this particular case, the moon will move gradually through the shadow and run through that 85-minute time frame from about 11:29 to 12:54 early tomorrow morning. And just to give you some idea as to what you can expect to see, if it were clear tonight from start to finish, here's a time lapse that was taken some years ago at the Griffith Observatory in Los Angeles. So now there you see the moon. All is bright. All is the way it usually looks, except now look on the left-hand side. Now it begins to look dusky and shadowy, and into the deep shadow we go. And it looks like a bite has been taken out of the moon's disk. And the shadow will gradually appear to progress across the face of the moon. And just before totality, only a few minutes before, the dark part of the moon suddenly lights up with that red color. And in fact, with that little sliver left over before totality, some call that the Japanese lantern effect. Beautiful sight in the sky. If you have binoculars or a telescope, the moon almost looks translucent, as if it were being illuminated from within. Then, eventually, the moon will exit out of the shadow. Last of the red color disappears. The shadow lifts out and away from the moon. And this particular eclipse from Los Angeles a few years ago happened just as the moon was, before the moon had a chance to leave the shadow. It set beyond the horizon. There's the view of where the entire eclipse is going to be visible. We here in the Northeast have ringside seats. We'll see it from start to finish. As I said, Europe and Africa will see the first part of the eclipse, and then the moon will set. Out here in the western United States and over toward Hawaii, the middle and latter stages of the eclipse will occur as the moon is rising. And again, in this entire region, 2.7 billion people whose eyes will be able to look skyward tonight to see this celestial show. This is a crater on the moon, Copernicus, one of the most prominent craters, 62 miles wide. And if you were standing in the middle of Copernicus tonight during the lunar eclipse, we talk about, we're meteorologists, so we talk about some occasional flash freeze events that take place. Well, thanks to the fact that there's no atmosphere on the moon or around the moon, the heat that is gained during the lunar day is quickly released into space once the shadow comes on by during the eclipse. When the eclipse begins at Copernicus tonight at 9:51 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time, 266 degrees, Joe, 266 degrees above 0 Fahrenheit at the beginning. Then totality about
What's
an hour
the heat
later.
index?
Oh, God. At just 1 hour.
Because we can't just say 266. We have to say, but it feels like 354.
Oh, God. But I mean, look at this. In 1 hour, the temperature goes from 266 to 115 below. Then you've got the long stretch in Copernicus during the phase when the sun is covered. Finally, the totality begins to end. The temperature has dropped even more from 115 to 146 below by the time totality ends. And then in less than an hour, boom, as the sun reappears, up go the temperatures again, back to 266 at the end of the eclipse tonight. So the temperature is going to go down about 400 degrees and then settle in at 146 below. And then right after the sun comes back, it jumps right back up to 266 at the end of totality at 2:25 a.m. tonight. So, and more interesting, last slide here. While it's frigid on the moon's surface, and the temperature drops like 100, 150 below zero. Meanwhile, underneath the surface of the moon, for whatever reason, the temperature remains very warm. This picture was taken during a total eclipse. The moon is completely in the shadow using infrared photography. And you could see there are spots here, bright spot. Here's Copernicus. It appears quite white and bright. Other areas of the moon appear quite bright. A few hundred feet below the lunar surface, it still remains warm even after. So maybe the surface of the moon in itself is kind of an insulator for regions just a few hundred feet below. But at the top of the surface layer, exposed to all of that cold weather, well, it's a whole different story altogether. It gets very, very cold. So in essence, that's what we're looking at, and that's what we hope to see tonight, weather conditions permitting for our lunar eclipse.
And Brad DeBoer, I'm going to hopefully say that right, watching from Toronto, Canada, Joe, has hit Super Chat twice. And Joe and I thank you very much for your generosity. It is always appreciated. Now,
Toronto's a beautiful, Toronto's a beautiful city. I was there on my honeymoon. This is almost 40 years ago. Yikes! But I would love to get back there again to that great city of Toronto. Joe, I'm going to have to. Is it possible to use the same link that you gave me?
Yeah.
If I bounce out for a minute and come back, can I use that same link to come back?
Why
do you have to give me another link?
You could just leave it open. You don't have to.
Well, the thing is that I can see you on my Zoom here, and I still see my slide of the show that I just gave. But no matter what I do, if I hit escape, I can't get rid of that slide, and I cannot see the YouTube video.
Oh, okay.
And the chat board of everything.
Well, if you have to, sure. I could see you fine, so you're coming through loud and clear. That link should work. So if you want to bounce out and bounce back in because you want to reset your computer, by all means, please do.
I'll bounce right back.
And I will forge ahead in the meantime. And while Joe is bouncing, never a dull moment on this program. We'll go back to what's going on. I want to switch to the radar because, at least from the standpoint of what might happen this evening, the thunderstorms that are on the northern parts north of Route 84 actually, in upstate New York through the Catskills and then running east-northeast into northwest Connecticut. Those seem to be holding up much better. In other words, they're stronger.
There we are.
Just pointing out, Joe, down on the radar, the storms that are north of you, north and northwest of you in the Hudson Valley, and east into northwest Connecticut, are holding up stronger. What's back in Pennsylvania now has pretty much, it's falling apart rapidly. So those things are on schedule. The issue is going to be the debris clouds, and I got a map that we could take a look at in terms of what they're forecasting as far as cloud cover is concerned. Out to the west, this is all being forced ahead of a cold front, and tonight's severe weather is rather active in parts of eastern Arkansas, northwestern Mississippi, western Tennessee, western Kentucky, where we have numerous severe thunderstorm warnings up at the moment. And we've also got some precip going into the Pacific Northwest that's running northwestward. Otherwise, much of the rest of the country is dry. There's some scattered showers of thunderstorms in the southeast that really aren't moving very much. A lot of this is just diurnal, and they'll more than likely be scattered around during the overnight hours too. Some of it will die out, but some of it may wind up holding together longer. And we've got also some downpours in upstate, well up into northeastern New York, northern Vermont, and New Hampshire. Now, as far as the sky cover, this is from the Weather Service's digital forecast, their digital database, and you can see on this that the gray areas are 60% or higher cloud cover. So if you're in upstate New York, if you're in western New York, the western and much of central Pennsylvania should be at least partly to mostly clear, down into West Virginia, Western Virginia. But just go to the east, on the east side of where the mountains are, and you've got numbers that are in the 75 to 85% range in terms of total cloud cover. I suppose you could look at this and say, well, at least it's not 100. So at least it implies that there might be some breaks and maybe you could get lucky. But again, just going back to what I mentioned about the satellite earlier on the loop, there is a sharp line behind it where it clears. I think the bigger issue is if you notice offshore, there's some low clouds. There's a fog bank from southeastern New England on eastward, and it's encroaching on Long Island and slowly moving westward at the lower level. So that's something that may happen. You could get rid of the debris clouds, but we mentioned the other night, if the wind direction behaves itself, you might be able to do something with this and get some improvement. So just have to watch we'll watch the observations and the satellite the next couple hours to see how all this goes. Now, moving on to tomorrow.
But you played it. But you did. Just one more thing here.
Yeah.
You played it perfectly when we last spoke. Was it on Thursday?
Yes.
And it was a perfect definition of what is happening right now. You said, and I quote Mr. Chiaffi, who knows everything about weather, that we would be tonight basically
kind.
or at least parts of Northeast is in the no man's zone or the no man's region, because we'll be in between the remnants of that remnant upper low and the sharp weather front, cold front that's heading our way for tomorrow. We're right in between the two systems. And so that corridor right now over western and central Pennsylvania is indeed the place to be if you are hoping to see the eclipse. And as far as later tonight, Joe, as I said, I think a lot of forecasters, and I've been guilty of this, and I'm sure you have too. You simply like broad brush. It's going to be cloudy. But when you're looking for a special event like this, and you're looking at every different parameter and criteria, you have to mix in a little bit of nowcasting. And you're right. That area of showers and storms right now, and it's not even 7:30 yet, is moving at a pretty good clip. And what we're hoping to see is a sight in the sky that basically is going to be between 11 o'clock and 1 a.m. And personally, I think the way things are moving right now to the east, certainly the back edge of that should be crossing through my neck of the woods here in the Hudson Valley by about 11 o'clock or midnight, which would be good timing because that would be heading into the total phase of the eclipse. Even though the computer models are basically, giving us schmutz, if you will.
Right.
At least one of the really short-term models, which you look at for, macro forecasting, micro meteorology here, is saying, again, I tried calibrating it before, is suggesting that there'll be enough of a push of drier air, and you're absolutely right. Winds will turn more to the south-southwest as opposed to the south-southeast. That's the killer for Connecticut and Long Island and the coast of New Jersey, the southeast wind continuing to push that moisture in from the ocean. But just enough of a push more to the west as opposed to the east in terms of the wind flow overnight should help in giving us a chance or a shot of seeing the lunar eclipse later tonight. We still have about 3, 4, 5 hours to play with. The stuff is now just moving into the tri-state region. And again, I would say north and west of New York, I think you got at least a 50 to 75% shot at seeing something tonight. South and east of New York, well, wait till next time. Next time will be in November. And then tomorrow, Joe, as you were about to say, all eyes turn to this. And again, I want to compliment you because for much of last week, you were talking about, we were looking at Storm Prediction Center and wondering what they were going to go for tomorrow, 4, 5, 6, 7 days out. And they kept putting up predictability too low. And you kept saying, I think we may have something on Monday. I think we may have more than just general thunderstorm activity. Well, guess what? A lot of our area is in enhanced zone tomorrow. And that doesn't happen too often. And it looks like we may be seeing a front that's pretty loaded for bear tomorrow afternoon and evening.
Yeah, the sharpness of the upper trough to me is impressive. And the other thing is, and I'll get to it, is the fact that the upper trough, when it's swinging through, it's coupled with the cold. Sometimes we see these things where the upper trough is lagging a bit, so that you're getting you're getting the eastern extent of it, and those can produce robust outbreaks also. But this one, the upper trough is kind of matched up with the cold front pretty well, and it's actually strengthening as it lifts through the northeast during tomorrow afternoon and tomorrow night, and that struck me. And when I saw that, I thought, you know what, this could be a pretty interesting outbreak of showers and thunderstorms for tomorrow. Now, the marginal risk tonight that we had from uh, basically along the I-81 corridor on westward has pretty much played itself out now. As we saw on the radar, all that's weakening. The stronger storms are actually in the area of general thunderstorms, so they'll probably be the odd severe thunderstorm warning that might pop up with some of those leftover cells. You can see the slight risk from Indiana, Illinois, down to Tennessee and Mississippi, and then west into Oklahoma with a small area of enhanced risk in eastern Oklahoma and western Arkansas, a 5% tornado risk in that small area and a 2% just about everywhere else. Now, tomorrow, we are looking at a rather large area of enhanced risk that covers much of New York State. The eastern flank goes from the Connecticut-Massachusetts line southwestward, almost but not quite to New York City, to just west of Cape May, down into northeastern Virginia, then kind of curls back around in central PA and runs back up to just north and west of Syracuse, up on the east shores of Lake Ontario, and of course the larger area of slight risk. And at the moment, they've got a 2 to 5% tornado risk. Now, there was a fair amount of daytime heating today, so I'm thinking tomorrow, if we do get the same, I don't see them taking these numbers and making them lower. If anything, they might actually, I don't know, I don't want to speak for them, but I think the dynamics are impressive enough that there might be some areas where the probability might be a little higher than 5%. But you know what? That's their job. That's SPC's job. They're great at it, and we'll let us see where they take us with all of this tomorrow. I'm going to bring up the NAM, the 12-kilometer NAM. So I want to show the upper air, and I like using the one with the wind and the vorticity because really you see the jet streaks, which in a case like this are very important. And I'm running it backwards at the moment. So we're now into Monday afternoon. In fact, I can do a close-up here since all the action's going to be up in the Northeast and Mid-Atlantic states. I think we could do it this way. But take a look at that trough as it swings eastward. It actually goes negative. In other words, the tilt on it is northwest-southeast. All those brownish blotches, those are jet streaks where you're seeing wind gusts of up to 50 knots, and there's going to be some mixing. That's going to mix down. You're going to have wind shear. I would not be surprised if you wind up seeing some rotation that develops in some of these thunderstorms that could produce the odd tornado or two. And the trough is actually sharpening, as I said, as it goes through, which is another factor here. Often the worst thunderstorms in terms of intensity are the ones when you catch them on the upswing while they're developing. That's right. That's when they're at their fiercest. And you've got a situation here where some areas are going to catch that, and at the same time, all the dynamics are moving through at the same time with it. You've got a lot of support here. By the way, the Cape numbers for tomorrow are pretty high. They're like up at around 1,500 in some places with this trough. Oftentimes, we get severe weather sometimes where the Cape numbers are under 1,000. And you're sort of dealing with all the other dynamics, but you've got the dynamics and you've got some solid Cape numbers with this, which is, I think, very important.
Absolutely. And in fact, just as you said that, just as you were saying, talking about the Cape numbers, I went to Le Plumes.
Oh, please do.
I wanted to see exactly what they had, what kind of Cape numbers they had for LaGuardia, and we're talking about what? We're talking about, well, the MU Cape numbers for LaGuardia. Now, again, LaGuardia is in New York City. We know that, but they're also closer to the water. Maybe it might be better if I look for some place that was just inland, like let's say Poughkeepsie. I'm going to check on that here. Oh yes, well, of course. As you get away from the water and the influence of the water, yes, it does go much higher. But whereas at LaGuardia, the Cape values for both the MU and the ML Cape were in the vicinity of like 700 and 800. When you go up to Poughkeepsie, it's like 14 to 1500. Quite obviously, because of the fact that you don't have any kind of influence from the water to help knock down the temperatures and the atmospheric energy. So yeah, and that's also why I would presume SPC has placed areas from north and west of New York in that enhanced zone of potential severe weather for tomorrow.
By the way, the HRRR has what I think is an interesting depiction of this. Now, this is at noon tomorrow, and it's already got a solid squall line of thunderstorms moving into western Pennsylvania. So that's impressive enough. The other thing is, Joe, is that this thing is moving. This thing is moving fast. These storms are in western New Jersey by between 4 and 5 o'clock. They arrive in western New Jersey. By 6 o'clock, they're at New York City. They slow down slightly, which they often do when they get to New York City and they start to have to feel the impact of the ocean. They start to slow down a little bit, and then they'll
Isn't that
start
because they want to do a little Isn't that because they want to do a little sightseeing?
No, they have to cross 2 bridges with tolls that are in double digits.
Okay. There you
go. But I would point out that now normally for those of you who are say on Long Island or in coastal southern or southeastern New England, that tomorrow you're going to have a wind that's going to be from the southwest, but it's not south, it's southwest. So that starts to limit the effect of the marine layer to an extent. The other thing is, and this is something that we're not going to really know till we get there, but I would bet that the strength of that upper trough may more than compensate for any kind of marine influence, because this time of year, usually these storms tend to weaken as they move east of New York City, and to some degree they do. But the fact that the upper trough is there, I think might allow these storms to last a little bit longer, and maybe that's why SPC today kind of nudged the slight risk area a bit further east into southern New England and into Long Island, and the marginal risk goes as far east as it does. And of course, if once you get past like 9 or 10 o'clock, you start to lose the impacts of all the daytime heating, and the storms do weaken quite a bit. So there's not much left by the time they arrive into southeastern eastern New England and beyond. And of course, the low lifts up to the northeast. But I think tomorrow's going to be an interesting day. One other thing, I'll see if I can bring this up. I want to see if they updated, and hopefully it won't take forever to load. As far as temperatures tomorrow, now if we break out into the kind of that squall line is pretty far west, from it's still got plenty of time. So most highs that are being forecasted are in the upper 70s to low 80s. I'm wondering if we get a little bit more sun than advertised, that we could wind up nudging these numbers a few degrees higher. And then, that could also impact these thunderstorms as they move eastward by giving them a little extra daytime heating juice.
I wouldn't doubt it. Yeah, and of course, we know that it's gonna start clearing out most everywhere toward daybreak if it doesn't clear out by the eclipse time tonight. So that we're going to kick the day off tomorrow with some sunshine, and that's going to start the ball rolling, so to speak. I'm wondering whether or not. See, I didn't get a close look at the Moss temperature predictions for today. I don't know how much above normal, or not above normal, but above the levels that were predicted today were. If they were, there was some kind of a bias for being a little cooler than what actually occurred.
Yeah.
Um,
I don't
yeah,
know.
but
I didn't check either. So I'll have to do that.
but there's certainly going to
Do
be
that
enough.
later.
It's certainly going to be warm enough tomorrow. I mean, like that, and plus we just saw the Cape values, the higher level dew point temperatures. So we're ready. We're all set for a rock'em sock'em afternoon, so to speak, and hopefully, my electrical. I got to say one thing about my where I get my electricity from. The town that I live in, Putnam Valley, you could blow on the cables, 5-10 years ago, and you'd have an outage for several hours. In the last few years, they have done a tremendous job in cutting down tree limbs and branches and trimming trees back to try to avoid a situation of a tree landing on a cable or a power line and causing an outage. So this is going to be a good test, I think, tomorrow as to whether or not we, at least right here where I live, we're going to lose any power or not. If we don't lose power tomorrow, after this barrage of potential high winds and severe weather, hail, and of course, need I say also a brief drenching down. If we don't lose power out of this, the town overall, our town has really done pretty good. Because, like I said a few years ago, something like this would have scared the living daylights out of me. I would tell Bernard, I said, we're going to be out of power for a while. I don't know how long, but it's gonna be a while. This is going to be a good test tomorrow to see what we're going to get.
All right, let's go to the upper air and see what we have down the road. This is a few interesting things that are out there, including the GFS continuing to show some signs of a tropical system uh, beginning to develop late this week and this coming weekend. So we talked about the fact that this has really all been about getting the atmosphere to normalize. We had that upper low. I'm just trying to get this back far enough so we can go back a couple of days. You can see the upper low back on Friday was along the southeast coast, and finally it broke down over this weekend. Deep upper low over Lake Winnipeg finally swings eastward. Here's this big arm that's coming through tomorrow with that sharp negatively tilted arm that's lifting northeastward for the severe weather. Going through this week where we don't really have any kind of blocking. Weather systems are going to be able to move from west to east, which is good. And the models have been also advertising the idea of maybe a ridge in the eastern part of the United States at the end of this week and into this coming weekend, which, as long as we don't get any kind of backdoor cold front at the surface, means that we could actually have a nice weekend next weekend where it's going to be warm. That'll be the first weekend that we can honestly call a warm weekend in I don't know how long, probably since back last fall. Meanwhile, here comes another trough that swings through the plains and heads to the western lakes. And if you look down in the western Caribbean, there's a little circle right over there. So that's this tropical system that the GFS keeps hinting on. By the way, the European, it's not that the European doesn't show it. The European does show as a tropical wave. It just what it does is the European just basically takes it straight west. And I would I would say that there's a flat ridge right here out in the Atlantic that extends into the Caribbean, but not quite all the way west on the GFS. And if that ridge is a little stronger, then that's maybe what will happen, that'll just move as a tropical wave and move on to the Pacific side. But this model says no, and you see it there curling up toward the Yucatan Peninsula, and then eventually, once again, depending on which run, so here's the problem. The timing on this either keeps getting pushed back by a day or, maybe pushes up by 12 hours. This particular run made it a little bit faster, but we've been still dealing with trying to see if this thing is going to get solidly inside the 7-day time frame period, which has not done so yet, at least not up until the last run. So every time the model runs, regardless of what happens in the tropics, you still have to deal with whatever traffic is going on across the United States. So on some runs, you might be hearing my dog barking. He sees something outside. So on some runs, you find that it's doing what it usually does. It takes it to the east, to the west, to the south, to the northwest, to the northeast. On this particular run, because it's timing itself with troughing that's dropping down into the plains, and you can see that trough just drop straight down. It's taking it and lifting it up northeastward, up the Appalachians on this particular run, Joe. For this would be probably the week of not this coming week, but the week after. Again, this is all pure speculation on the model's part, but it all has to do with the fact that the model's not really doing a good job in zeroing in on whether it's real, which is at the end of the day, if there's no system, there's really a waste of time to even talk about this. So we have to determine whether that's going to happen, and B, if it does happen, does it move far enough north where it gets caught by some trough that's moving across the U.S., and how does that time out down the road? Because honestly, I mean, I could envision a scenario where you could see this come up the Appalachians if it forms. But that goes back to the original question, Joe. We still don't know whether that's going to be the case. Now, I will say, and we were looking at the Gulf of Mexico water temperatures from the middle of last week, and actually the waters, that warm pool that we talked about last week, has warmed up a bit more. The temperatures climbed about 1 degree Celsius in the last 5 or 6 days. So that's interesting. And if you're going to get something that's going to develop that's of consequence, it's going to have to thread that needle and go into that warm pool that's in the east central Gulf. Off the Florida coast, water temperatures remain on the coolish side, and that is going to be an inhibiting factor for any kind of strengthening, which would be good news if that, again, it's all predicated on whether this even happens or not. And in the Western Gulf, it's kind of borderline at best. So if something does form, if the only way it strengthens is if it gets inside that warm pool that's in the east central Gulf of Mexico. It's just way too early, and that's why all the other areas haven't quite warmed up yet. So with that in mind, let's quickly just run through the local weather, since there isn't going to be too much after we get through this thing on tomorrow. The rest of the week, it just looks like weak systems coming through, weak little kinks in the flow. There's one that approaches Wednesday night and Thursday. You can see these showers and some storms there in the upper Midwest on a Tuesday, moving southeastward to the eastern PA to southern New England on Wednesday evening. Then that goes out. Then it looks like some diurnal stuff starts to form as you get the ridge building off the east along the east coast, and a west-southwest flow from Thursday right in through Sunday, and then it's got tries to bring a cold front nearby late next Sunday afternoon, and now you begin to see the model picking up on whatever it is that's coming out of the Caribbean, if it's even real, and doing whatever it's going to do with it down the road. Bottom line is, that's, again, I have no clue on that. It's pure speculation, and frankly, the odds are that nothing may come of this. So, it's sort of fun for us weather weenies to look at this sort of stuff, but we can't really take it seriously until we, at the very least, we got to see some consistency once it gets inside that 7-day time frame, and then we can begin to figure out, okay, what's it going to do? How's it going to behave? What are the water temperature impacts, and so on. So that's it.
So we said a couple of days ago. I think I pointed out that these last couple of summers, the GFS really has overplayed or outplayed the European in terms of picking up on the beginnings of a tropical system. Eventually, the European catches up. But here we go again. I mean, once again, we have a case where the GFS has been proclaiming or promoting in its own numerical way that there's going to be some kind of a system that resembles a tropical system coming out from the Gulf states. The European, well, it says, well,
the Europeans just got that. It's like a little kink, a tropical wave that just moves straight westward. That's the European. That's all it has.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
by the way, did we get another super chat hit? Because I'm not seeing it. Oh, here, yeah, we did. Oh, that was Brad. Okay, maybe these are all Brads. Oh, yeah, Leon Probitsky hitting super chat. Thank you, Leon. Most appreciated. Yes, a third
Thank
super
you, Leon.
chat hit from Brad DeBoer from Toronto. Thank you, Brad. Most generous of you. And appreciate you watching the show tonight. Uh, thanks. Thank you. Oh, by the way, you mentioned something last week, and I know you got to go early because you got things to do. Correct? It's coming up on
Yeah.
7:50.
Well. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
So
It's
no. So you mentioned the other day about on your thinking about going to this trip, and you mentioned that place in Arizona and how dark it was that you could not see. You could barely
your
see
hand in
the
front
out.
of your face.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I have to tell you because I thought of you this morning because I had to go to I had to drive down to Marietta this morning for a birthday party, and so I left at for a kid's birthday party. I had to leave at 5:30 this morning to get there. So, so I'm out, my sunsets here are half an hour later than your sunsets. So the corresponding sunrises are a half an hour later. So at 5:30 in the morning, it's pitch black out here. And I noticed this morning there is one little street light, and that's it on a nearby road that I can see from my house, but there's no other light at all. So there's hardly any light pollution. And I didn't put the light on for the porch. Oh, I didn't even tell you what happened on Friday. So I didn't put the light on the porch because I was leaving and I didn't want to leave the light on all day. I could not see. I could barely make my hand out in front of my face. So I kind of related to what you were saying. The other thing I want to mention is Thursday night I went to bed and at a little after 1 a.m. JJ woke me up with a growl and a little bark, and then I was hearing thumping. And I went to my front door, and lo and behold, Joe, I had a bear on my front porch who went for my bird
Woo.
feeder. I saw him. It was a nice sized bear. He was by himself. I saw him behind the safety of my locked door. Um, but this is the third time I've had a bear here, but this is the first time that I've actually seen it. The first two times, the bear left ample evidence of his visitation, but this time around, he actually, which surprised me, because I had trash in my garbage pail, and they usually go right for that. But he didn't do that. He actually climbed up on the garbage pail to get over the railing and onto the porch. He kind of did a little damage to my poor rosemary plant, but she seems to be recovering. But yeah, it was really exciting. I mean, I really was. It was. I'm looking at my window and I see this big bear just kind of loping along on all fours, very slowly, just moving away. He didn't like the bird seat in the bird feeder, so it just left it there and the mess on the floor. But it was quite an exciting night.
Now this is one good reason why I'd love to come visit you, but I'm never going to come down there for stargazing. The last thing I'd want to be is out there in the darkness and all of a sudden have this big furry thing come, creeping up to
Oh,
me.
listen, if they hear you, they will not come near. If they hear you outside, they won't bother you. They're not aggressive.
Uh-huh.
You have to be fearful if you have to be a little fearful and very cautious if you have a female with cubs, obviously, because they are extremely protective and um, they will go after larger
Well,
males that
I mean, we've
have
seen on
other things in
YouTube
mind.
we've seen on YouTube situations where there's like a bear with like 2 or 3 cubs, and some idiot would get out of their car to get a closer look. And once that idiot approached one of the cubs, here comes Mama Bear, and there goes the idiot. So
Yeah.
you don't want to get near. You don't want to get near a bear family. having one lone bear out there, that's one thing. But if you even show the slightest bit of signs of interest in the little ones, Mama Bear is going to make her presence felt real fast.
Yeah, they leave you alone. They leave you alone. But apparently, I was talking with my neighbors. There's been a lot of wildlife sightings around here. We've had a lot of um, bobcats, mountain lions have been spotted also, which is pretty interesting. And you know, the usual the usual stuff: turkeys, foxes, and also the coyotes have been especially active, and
Yeah,
that's concerning because a lot of people have dogs here. I would not let a little if I had a little dog, and I don't even let my dog run loose at all. He's always on a leash when he's outside, but a lot of people here let their animals run loose. If I had a dog, particularly a small one, that's the last thing I would do because there are coyotes and
yes,
they hunt in packs. Sometimes you'll have one coyote go out alone and lure an animal back to where the pack is, and then they tear them apart. I mean, look, they're part of the environment here. They have families to raise and kids to and mouths to feed, as every other animal this time of year in mating season
yes.
has. So that's just the way it goes. But um, a little common sense is in order. Especially if you've got a small dog or cat, I would not be. I'd keep him inside. So anyway, I just wanted to share that with you. So uh, let's see. Tomorrow night. I'm sorry. What time tomorrow night are we going?
That's a good question. Hang on. I haven't. Oh, yes, I know. It's well here. This is interesting. I do have a talk tomorrow night at 7 o'clock from actually more than one library. A whole bunch of libraries out on Long Island. They've all kind of chipped in together to and I will be presenting via mass media or whatever, or mass Zoom link to all these libraries. It's at 7 o'clock tomorrow night, Joe. But I did send them all a special announcement this morning saying that just in case that I'm in the middle of the talk, for example, that I lose power, or I might lose power before the talk. And then we'll have to figure something else out. But it's 7 o'clock, which assumes that if it does go off, that you and I will be together tomorrow night, I guess, at 8:30, or maybe you want to try something on your own and then I'll join later. I don't know.
Uh, hmm. All right. Well, you know what? Why don't we talk about it tomorrow? I'll message you and we can talk about
Okay.
it tomorrow.
All righty.
Okay. See the whole truth. You know, he put something up here real quick, and then I know because you got to go. You might be more familiar. He says something called the Weatherman's Guide to the Sun by Ben Davidson. Are you familiar with this?
I'm not familiar with it, but it almost sounds like if it's that perhaps it's forecasting the weather using solar flares or
It says
sunspots.
it's under on YouTube under Channel Suspicious Observers. I don't know.
I've not heard about it.
Yeah,
I don't.
I have not either, and if I have a little time, I'll go take a look and see what that's all about. But right now, I got my hands full. So thanks to all the super chat hits, most appreciated from Leon, from Brad DeBoer in Toronto, Canada. Uh, Thank you. I love it when we get people from outside. I've noticed, by the way, I mentioned to you that we've got we're getting people that are watching from Europe. So I get a big kick out of that. Trish Sparaccio just hitting super chat. Thank you very much, Trish. Hope everything is going well by you. And okay, so look, time to go, folks. It's 7:56 Eastern time. If you tuned in late, Joe did this whole lunar eclipse dissertation at the beginning of the show, so you could just go back and in a few minutes, once it's done loading into my YouTube library, which usually takes about 10 minutes, 15 minutes tops, you can go back and watch the beginning of the program and get all the information you need regarding tonight's lunar eclipse. Severe weather tomorrow night. We'll have more on what's going on with that in the tropics tomorrow. And Joe, have fun tonight. I'm going to try to watch it from here. I got to see where I can get away from the mountains and see how high. What time is it? It should start after 10 o'clock, correct?
At 10:28, the
Oh,
moon starts moving into the shadow, and totality comes from 11:29 to about 12:55. So you've got 85 minutes, and of course by 12:55 the moon is at its highest point in the southern sky. So
I should be
you should
fine.
be able to see it.
Yeah, I should be fine.
Yep.
Let me see. I had some clouds. I got some. I would say probably about 60% cloud cover, so I might get away with it if the atmosphere stabilizes here. I don't have a low cloud issue, so
Right.
at least, at least not yet. Okay, have a great night. Have a great night, everybody. We'll see you tomorrow night here on the Joe and Joe Weather Show.